have been mass protests by the Hindu community in Bangladesh today, even as Prime Minister Modi asks the new interim government in Bangladesh to ensure that Hindus and other religious minorities are protected. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our focus continues to be on the situation on the ground in Bangladesh, where, as you can see from the images, chants of Hare Rama, Hare Krishna today filled the streets as Hindu groups demanded protection and security from the new interim government, a government that is being led by Muhammad Yunus, the 84-year-old Grameen Bank public intellectual who had often been criticized by the Sheikh Hasina government. Amid protests, the Bangladesh Chief Justice has also resigned. This was a major demand by the students who are on the streets. In the meantime, Sheikh Hasina, the ousted Prime Minister of Bangladesh, is still in India. There are question marks over what she might do next. Will she seek asylum in some corner of the world? Will she stay on in India? Or will she return to Bangladesh? These questions are mounting even as her son, Sajeeb Wazed, has pointed a finger at Pakistan's ISI for fueling the protests on the streets of Dhaka and elsewhere in Bangladesh. Joining us now from Washington, where he has been based for several years, is Sajeeb Wazed Joy, the son of Sheikh Hasina, an Awami League leader himself, an advisor to the former government. Thank you so much, Sajeeb. We appreciate your time because I can only imagine how crazy busy it must be for you. Let me start by asking you when you last spoke to your mother, because here in India, we know she's here. But we really don't know much else. We know she's at a secure, safe house, and that's all we know. Can you tell us when was the last time you spoke to her? What are her spirits like? What is she thinking of doing next?
Thank you for having me. I spoke with her this morning, just a few hours ago, just a little while ago. She's strong. She's very disappointed, very disheartened by what has happened in Bangladesh, and she is, she's receiving a lot of calls and messages from people in Bangladesh, both our party and outside, and already, a lot of people are expressing that they've made a mistake by going against her. The last 15 years were the greatest economic growth of Bangladesh in its history, the greatest stability. Were there mistakes made by people in the government? Of course. But, those people should be brought to justice. The whole government shouldn't, be should have been thrown out like this, because what's happening now in Bangladesh is basically chaos. Today, the mob, they call themselves protesters, but this is basically a mob, demanded the resignation of the Chief Justice and threatened to burn down his house. So he resigned, and they named a new Supreme Court. So basically, the new Supreme Court of Bangladesh has been appointed by a mob. There's no law and order. There's no constitutional process. There's nothing. There's no representative democracy. So if the Supreme Court of a country can be handpicked by a mob, then what is the future of the country?
You said that mistakes were made by the previous government. Do you think mistakes were made by your mother, Sheikh Hasina? Her critics have accused her, A, of arrogance, B, of cracking down with violence on the students protesting on the streets. First, do you acknowledge that there were students, or do you think that these were someone, these were not students?
No, there were definitely students in the forefront, but if you notice, our opposition had joined the protest as well. And once the violence started, these protesters, there were protesters attacking the police with firearms. They were shooting at the police. They attacked and took over a police station with firearms and shot policemen in other places. So where did these firearms come from? Do students have firearms? Do student protesters have firearms? Somebody had to supply the firearms, because especially when you're protesting against the government in a country, you don't have a source of firearms. Those can only be brought in from the outside. They can only be supplied, smuggled in, either by terrorist groups or by intelligence agencies. So
you have Yeah, you have pointed a finger at Pakistan's ISI. What is your basis? Many have asked to make that link between the protests on the street and Pakistan's intelligence agency.
The firearms. That is my strong link. Is where did these firearms in the hands of these protesters come from? They could not have found them in Bangladesh because our government had secured militancy in Bangladesh. So for militants to smuggle in firearms into Bangladesh is almost impossible. This had to be a foreign intelligence service. And the only one that has the direct capability close by is the ISI. ISI has been has been infiltrating Bangladesh for years. Our government put a stop to it.
So you believe that Pakistan's eyes. So I've heard many theories since your mother's government was ousted. Pakistan link, China link, US link. But when I speak to those who are still in Bangladesh, they say you're acting as if the people of Bangladesh have no agency, that we don't have a mind of our own. Why would you not accept this to be mass protests by the people of Bangladesh? What do you say to that?
No, I'm not denying that. That's not what I'm saying either. But if you look at it, the protests were incited. I don't think the mass people of Bangladesh wanted what's happening now. This is chaos. Is this what the mass people wanted? Because I'm hearing from people who even said my mother should resign. They're now panicking that we are in chaos. This is not
Mhm.
what we wanted. What happened is the protests were legitimate, but if you'll notice, there was no need for the protest to escalate. When did the violence start? The violence started when, in the middle of the night, a group started marching in Dhaka University chanting, "We are Rajakar, we are Rajakar." Because online, a statement from my mother was taken and it was twisted. She had said, "We don't want Rajakar's families getting government jobs." They twisted that to say she called us Rajakar. She didn't. But then
Mm.
somebody marched in the middle of the night on July 15th, and that's when that enraged our students. Our students attacked. The police went in to try to stop the violence, and some of the police used excessive force. Now, our government immediately called off. I was part of those conversations. I said to my mother, no, 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 we need to tell our students not to fight, get off the streets. We need
Mm.
to suspend the police officers who use excessive force. We did all that. We formed a 3-member judicial committee uh, to investigate all the deaths. My mother invited the protesters to come for dialogue. We appealed to the Supreme Court. You see, that the whole quota movement wasn't even after a government action. Our government had repealed the quotas many years ago. And immediately, our government, the quotas were restored by a court ruling, and our government appealed that immediately to the Supreme Court. And then we actually expedited the Supreme Court hearing, and the quotas were rescinded. So
Mm.
we accepted all of their demands. I've talked to some of our ministers who then went to talk to the protesters. But there was no dialogue. They did not want to engage in dialogue. They did not want to, no matter what demand we accepted, kept someone kept escalating the situation. So marching in the middle of the night in Dhaka University chanting, "We are Rajakar, we are Rajakar," is like marching in the middle of Jerusalem at night chanting, "We are Nazis, we are Nazis." That
Mm.
is, so I believe someone intentionally incited violence because they knew if they did that, our students would get angry and react, and violence would happen.
Some
None
of
of this
the
was ordered by the government. Deadly force was
Yeah.
not ordered by the government. Even at the
So the
end,
police, so the police that is accused of using excess force on the students acted on its own, not under orders from the Hasina government.
right? No, the police were ordered to try to calm the situation, to stop the violence. But it was a chaotic situation. There was fighting going on everywhere. That's what
I,
was
I
happening,
want,
and police were
I
attacked
want,
too.
I want to ask you. Some Bangladeshi students have spoken to. They say that these slogans of Razakar, these were raised because they were being slurred as kind of anti-national, so they kind of embraced the insult, as it were. That is their reasoning for raising those slogans. How do you respond to that?
So if again, I will go back to that. If anyone today in Western world were to embrace and say, yes, we are Nazis, how would people of the country feel? That is exactly what that is. If they want to declare themselves as embrace being Rajakars, well, then what you're saying is you don't believe in Bangladesh. You are against Bangladesh.
Hmm. We'll come to what's happening or what will happen next in Bangladesh in a moment. Let's talk a little bit about your mother's next moves or next set of options. You spoke to her today itself. She's still in India. Let's start with the Indian intervention. You have thanked Prime Minister Modi for saving your mother's life. Do you believe that had she not been able to come to India when she did, she would have been killed? Is that what you think? Is that what you apprehended?
Yes, in fact, I was the one who convinced her to leave the country. She was not going to leave. Even you see all these accusations about her using ordering excessive force. Her special security force, which is her prime minister's guards, they were ready to guard Ganabhavan, the prime minister's residence. They are very, very heavily armed. If the protesters had tried to attack, hundreds, if not thousands of them would have died. And my mother said, I do not want their blood on my hands. So they took her to a secure location and they arranged helicopters. My mother told my aunt, who was with her, you get on the helicopter, I'm staying here. I'm not leaving this country. My aunt called me, put me on the phone with my mother. I said, no, these are not protests for democracy or rights. This is a mob. They are going to kill you. And your safety is our first priority. You have to leave the country.
So you believe your mother would have been killed by the mob had she not left for India?
Yes, you look at several of our leaders were killed. Many of our MPs were killed. Almost all our homes have been burnt down. The house that my father built 40 years ago, that's been burnt down. My grandfather's house, which is the home of the father of the nation, where he was murdered. My entire family was murdered. That was a museum. That was burnt down. My grandfather, who's the father of the nation, you're showing a video right now of his statue being torn down. So he's the father of the nation, regardless of whether it's Awami League or not. This is like a statue of Mahatma Gandhi being torn down in India. That has nothing to do with politics. This is going against, and you tie that in with the chants of Rajakar. What does that indicate to me? That those who didn't want independence, they didn't want an independent Bangladesh, perhaps they were involved in these protests.
Now, you have denied that your mother has sought asylum in the United Kingdom or elsewhere. Can you set the record straight then on what she's planning to do next?
She has made no plans. She wants to return to Bangladesh, whether she's in politics or not. This was going to be her last term. She was going to retire. Her dream was to go live in her village home. That is what she wants. That is what she still wants. So we're just waiting to see how the situation plays out.
How long do you want for her to be in India? And has India conveyed, because we have a very little official information, we've been told she's here for a short while, and that's all that, and I understand the sensitivity of the issue because of security concerns, but is it your desire that she stays on in India for a prolonged time? What would be conditions in which you would say to her, go back to Bangladesh?
I would say when law and order is restored in Bangladesh. Right now, there is no law and order. Again, you've just had a mob pick the Supreme Court of a country. I don't know what to say to that. This is unbelievable. This is in what transition or freedom does that happen that the mob gets to pick the Supreme Court of a country? How does that happen? How can there be any law and order in a country like that?
You have been in Washington for many years. There are those asking whether you will now be the face of the Awami League. Will you consider going back to Bangladesh and taking on the role that your mother once had? Is that something you're thinking about?
No, it's not something I've ever wanted. I've never had political ambition, but right now at the same time, I cannot allow my grandfather's memory to be desecrated like this, the memory of our independence, the history of our independence. And as well as our party is looking for leadership. So I'm willing to do what it takes. I don't know what that is, but I'm now, that's why I'm talking to the media, because I believe I can make a difference. I can turn, I cannot allow my country, and especially my party and our independence, to be thrown away.
In India, the Prime Minister has expressed concern at what's happening to the Hindu minority in Bangladesh. We have seen mass protests by Hindu groups today. We have seen Hindu artists come under attack. We have seen targeted violence, and there is concern. What do you make of the Hindu minorities that are coming under attack in Bangladesh?
Unfortunately, that was inevitable as soon as Sheikh Hasina was forced out. And this is what a lot of people in Bangladesh are now regretting. You cannot deny that the last 15 years, Sheikh Hasina's government kept Bangladesh safe, kept the minorities safe. And we are the only government in the history of Bangladesh that has protected the minorities. No other government has. Others promised, but once they were in power, there were attacks on minorities. So without the Awami League in power in Bangladesh, unfortunately, no one can guarantee the safety of the minorities. Did the law enforcement and the what do you call it? The security apparatus, those in charge of the security apparatus of our country, I'm seeing more and more evidence. Yes, they made a lot of bad decisions. They did things that they shouldn't have. They are the ones who should be held accountable, not my mother. These were not ordered by my mother. But without her, without the Awami League, you are not going there. No one can guarantee the safety of the minorities.
So you're not impressed by some of the accounts that have come of civil society, Muslim clerics in some cases, students in other cases, guarding temples. We've also seen those reports amid huge concern, of course, around targeted killings and attacks on Hindus.
Yeah, of course they're trying, but how long will they succeed? How long will this succeed? You see,
so are you concerned?
Hindus are already fleeing to the border, asking to be let into India.
Yeah. Are you concerned about the rise of Islamism?
Of course. I mean, you answered that question yourself. If these people are embracing being called Rajakar, and they're in the interim government, they've included the Islamists as well, but they've excluded the Awami League. So I think it becomes quite clear which direction the country is going to go now. Awami League is the only large secular party in Bangladesh. Our opposition, the BNP, they're the other large party, but they are right of center. So that is the balance. Without the Awami League, there is no balance.
You've said that Sheikh Hasina never actually resigned. So in your mind, you see her still as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh?
Legally, she still is. Constitutionally, she still is. Everything that's happening right now is completely outside the Constitution. Now, they're trying to figure out how to have a referendum or do this or do that to sort of legitimize this. And the Supreme Court has ruled, yes, this government is legal. But the Supreme Court has ruled that it's legal. If you read the Supreme Court's ruling, it's legal because there was no other option. The government collapsed. There was no government. Some government had to be put in power. But, unfortunately, other shall we say, unelected governments have tried. They've had referendums, they've had constitutional amendments, and our Supreme Courts have ruled that all those are illegal, unconstitutional. All of that eventually got overwritten because they did not have legitimate constitutional authority. In order to do that, you have to have an elected parliament. You cannot just replace the Supreme Court without an elected parliament.
So Sajeeb, tell me this. You are in Washington, you've lived there for many years. The West has not been very supportive of your mother. Instead, you've had pretty much an embrace of the new interim government that is led by Muhammad Yunus. He is somebody who was who was criticized by the Sheikh Hasina government, and today he's being hailed as the kind of the new mascot of a new beginning for Bangladesh. A, how do you see Mr. Yunus as the choice to lead the government? And B, how do you see the Western reaction, in particular the American reaction? Because the word is that Washington was not in alignment with Hasina and has been happy to see her be ousted.
Well, it's one thing to be placed in power without even winning the people's vote. It's a whole other thing to govern. Dr. Yunus, I mean, he has never been in politics. He's tried, but he had no political support. No one joined his political party. He has never been in government. He has never been in administration. Having been an advisor, an honorary advisor, I've seen how challenging it is to advise a ministry, let alone run a government. So we shall see how this government does. Already, you've had 2 days now. They can't even establish law and order. They couldn't even have an orderly transition of the Supreme Court. I mean, seriously, the mob said, here's a list of the new Supreme Court. What does this government do? They were powerless. So What will happen, we shall see. I'm waiting to see, but reality is we've seen this playbook before in other countries where the West has backed someone that they highly regard to run a country, put him in power, and he has really failed within a very short time. If you look at Iraq, you have seen Mr. Maliki was put in by the West. How long did he last? In Afghanistan, how long did that government last? So we shall see. I'm just waiting to see.
Let me ask you a last question. You said you thanked the Prime Minister, you thank India for saving your mother's life. What do you expect India to do now? Because, India is in a very precarious position, an inflammable border potentially. But at the same time, India has to do business with whoever is the next government in Bangladesh, right? It is a critical relationship. What is your expectation of India and the government, the Modi government at this point?
At this point, the current government, interim government, if you will, in Bangladesh, is proving to be completely powerless. They're not going to be able to stop insurgency coming into Bangladesh. So the longer they stay in power, the weaker Bangladesh is getting. Already most, not just the Prime Minister's residence, Parliament's been ransacked, ministries have been ransacked. So even just running the country is going to be very difficult. The government machine, the metro system has been burnt down. The country, the functioning of the government, even repairing it is a monumental task at this point. And this non-elected government with with no popular support and no experience is not, you've got two 26-year-olds running ministries. How are they? Do you really think they're going to be able to run it? I don't. I'm not confident I could run a country, and I've been in a political family my entire life. So good luck to them. We shall see. As far as the government of India, the longer this government stays in power, the weaker Bangladesh gets, the more militancy takes hold. If you have elections, if the Awami League is excluded, if the Awami League is somehow subdued and not allowed to participate, then again, our opposition will come to power. I'm sure they'll promise this and that, but they've been in power twice, and you've seen what has happened to the stability and security and safety of minorities. The only government that has a proven track record of providing stability on the eastern border has been the Awami League. And again, does it have to be the same Awami League? No. People in the Awami League, the ones that made mistakes, they don't have to come back. But the Awami League is the oldest political party in Bangladesh. It has no lack of leadership. There is plenty of leadership within the Awami League. There's plenty of good, capable people within the Awami League who can continue that work and ensure safety. So the Indian government really should pressure to a swift return, constitutionally mandated return to democracy within 90 days, and free and fair elections with equal participation of the Awami League, including in the run-up to the elections. And I believe the Awami League will still win an election.
Before I let you go, if this election does take place, will Sheikh Hasina herself take part in the next election whenever it takes place, if she's allowed to take place? Because there's also a theory that if she goes back, she will have to face the wrath of the law. Her critics say that she jailed her opponent, so now she may get the same treatment. Do you realistically see your mother returning to Bangladesh? Is she ready to face a court of law if cases are brought against her? Or is she actually retiring from active politics?
I don't know if she's retiring from active politics. I cannot answer that. She has said nothing in that regard. But in terms of the law, again, this is something that we have seen before. 17 years ago, when there was a military dictatorship, they filed cases against my mother. My mother had to fight to go back to Bangladesh because she wanted to stand on trial. And they put her on trial, and she was acquitted of all the charges. The opposition, if you remember that when our opposition was in power, they were regarded as the most corrupt country in the world, most corrupt government. And so how justice applies is, yes, you have to take a person to trial. You have to convict them under the law. Opposition members weren't just jailed without a trial. Now, a few were, from what I'm hearing, but that had nothing to do. My mother did not order that. So if you'll have to prove, you want to put my mother on trial, that's fine, but you have to prove that she's the one who ordered excessive force. She's the one who ordered human rights violations. I know she did not. So without proof, you're not going to be able to convict her. And so she's not afraid of that.
All right, Sajeeb Wazed, we'll leave it there. It's a very fluid and inflammable and tense situation. We hope to reconnect with you in a few more days to have another look at what's happening on the ground in Bangladesh. Thank you so much for making time. I know your phone's been ringing off the hook. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.